There's a lot of anniversaries this week. We the 60th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, 30th anniversary of the JFK Records Act becoming a law, and it's also the 30th anniversary of the death of Jim Garrison. And I wanted to close out our conversation tonight to talk a little bit about Jim Garrison, remember him, because without him, without Jim Garrison, none of us would probably be sitting here having this conversation today. He was the only prosecutor in history to actually charge one of the likely conspirators with the murder of President Kennedy. He was the inspiration for Oliver Stone's movie, JFK. And he's the reason that 3 generations now of researchers, people like you, Jim, me, and those younger than us, still follow in his giant footsteps. So I just wanted to close this out by taking a look back at the life of a man who was a real profile in courage in my book. I'm pretty sure you'd agree.
Oswald denied knowing Ferry, denied knowing any of the people who identified him as Clay Bertrand.
I am not Clay Bertrand.
But Jim kept looking, and what they came across was a rumor that Shaw, Ferry, and Oswald had been spotted together in a little town called Clinton.
Garrison located witnesses in Clinton, Louisiana, who would testify that in 1963, during the drive to get blacks to register to vote, that Lee Harvey Oswald showed up at the voters' registration site, and he was accompanied by Clay Shaw and David Ferry.
Now, what would a guy like Clay Shaw be doing with someone like David Ferry? Okay, what would a guy like Clay Shaw be doing with somebody like Lee Harvey Oswald?
Hey, that's you.
Okay,
that is me.
Witness after witness testified about this
30 years ago.
With Clay Shaw, another part of the evidence that Garrison had acquired was a party that was attended supposedly by Clay Shaw, by Lee Harvey Oswald, and David Ferry at Ferry's apartment. And the witness in this case, who also attended the party, Perry Russo, said that they discussed an assassination of John Kennedy.
I went up there and walked up this spiral staircase, up the steps, and I met Oswald. I had met Shaw. I met Shaw there. I had seen Shaw before and was introduced. There were several Cubans. We talked about different things. And Ferry was in a heated mood. He came up with ideas on assassinating Castro. He came up with ideas on assassinating Kennedy and blame it on somebody that likes Castro.
And the conspiracy under the law is the same as committing a murder. It was my jurisdiction, New Orleans. It was my duty to locate and prosecute anybody in New Orleans that had something to do with assassination, and I got somebody when we got Clay Shaw.
Up until this point, Jim's investigation had been conducted in entire secrecy. It was funded by publicly accountable funds, and they had used about $8,000. An enterprising young reporter, Rosemary James, had tracked the accounts and had found out that money had been used for the Kennedy investigation.
Dave Snyder and I, who's also a reporter for the States Item, spent quite a bit of time in talking to people, and eventually we had enough for a story.
It goes public. And once they decide that it's on the JFK plot, the entire press of the Western world descends on New Orleans. The second thing that happens is that David Ferry mysteriously dies about a week later.
The circumstances of his death to this day have never been satisfactorily explained. And he had a direct link to Oswald. He had a link to Clay Shaw.
Jim made what he called a command decision. That was to arrest Clay Shaw and charge him with conspiring to murder the president. I think he felt that he didn't have quite the case that he would have liked to if he had been able to keep it secret. But since he had been forced into the public eye, he wanted to make sure he had Clay Shaw before Clay Shaw mysteriously disappeared.
Quiet! All right, Bill, will you start again?
Mr. Shaw is in custody at this time. I said the arrest was made in this office. Mr. Shaw is still here.
I don't want to comment in any way on Mr. Shaw because I want to lean over backwards, not to infringe on any of his rights.
I think it was most evil bringing in an innocent man, Clay Shaw, and pillaring him in the public eye, or attempting to, and causing him great difficulties, of course.
Garrison's main theory is that it was a branch of the CIA that had more or less decided to do this on their own. Shaw, it turns out, had a long record of contacts with the CIA.
Later on, we found out that Shaw was a CIA man, that in fact he had been a colonel in the OSS during World War II.
I know he was the director of the at the International Trade Mart, where we had information that he was involved with the CIA. In fact, I was told that by Dave Ferry.
Clay Shaw was arrested on March 1st, 1967. Jim was under a great deal of pressure, and what he did was he presented his case before a grand jury, and the grand jury returned an indictment against Shaw on charges of conspiring to murder the president. At that point, strange things began happening in Jim's office. He found that the FBI had bugged his offices. Everywhere Jim traveled, FBI was following him.
We were so naive. We were like children. The office had been thoroughly penetrated, and in many cases, files were missing, and in other cases, files were turned over wholesale amounts to the defense. They had more of our files than we had when the case started.
Got no cooperation at all from the FBI. Tried to get different witnesses before our grand jury to testify under oath, which were blocked by the federal government.
Mr. Garrison, do you feel that your case has really been hurt by this lack of cooperation with the federal government?
As to preventing us from being successful, there's no chance in the world. I'm sure that they think they can.
It was in March of 1967 that Clay Shaw was charged with conspiring to kill President Kennedy. Now, almost 2 years later, Shaw will go on trial here in this building tomorrow morning.
The trial took place in February of 1969, lasted a month. There were a lot of witnesses. The world press again came down to New Orleans, and it was a circus-like atmosphere. It happened to coincide, the beginning of it, with Mardi Gras, but that only contributed to the sense that this was a media circus.
What do you think of the treatment you're getting from the news media?
Who writes your questions? Your switchboard operator? I'll see all that.
When you come to work in the morning and you'd see in the hallway reporters from all over the world practically breaking the door down. We had to have security guards at the doors so that everybody just wouldn't compile in. You felt this was important, what you were doing. This was important.
You had reporters from all over the United States. You even had them from Russia. And I was aware of the fact that this was being written up all over the country. Whether or not they proved the conspiracy on the part of Shaw with other people, that's a separate legal point. But I certainly thought there was sufficient evidence to warrant bringing it to trial. Let a jury decide it.
Now let me tell you why President Kennedy was murdered and how he was murdered. If you, the people of the United States, will learn the truth that the president was assassinated by men who were once connected with a Central Intelligence Agency, of course, this might reflect on the dignity of the CIA.
Dignity?
But I happen to believe that our form of government is strong enough to survive the truth. And I believe that people of America want to know the entire truth about how their president was shot down in the streets of Dallas. And I want to assure you that as long as I am alive, no one is going to stop me from seeing that you obtain the full truth, and nothing less than the full truth, and no fairy tales.
There was a feeling that I'll never forget when the jury went out, when they were deliberating. I felt confident that we did a job we thought we had to do, and I had seen some of our hard-nosed assistants, when that jury came back with the verdict, actually broke down.
There are a number of things that I believe that Shaw testified to that I did not believe. I believe he was lying to the jury. Of course, the jury probably believed him. But I think Shaw put a good con job on the jury.
It took the jury, I think, only about a half hour to exonerate him from all charges. He was declared not guilty. Nevertheless, it ruined a man's life.
No, I think that's a fair statement. I have been financially ruined. This is not to say that I'm starving to death, you understand. But in comparison to what I had and what I have, I've been financially ruined, yes.
That was a frivolous prosecution. It was a prosecution that was of Clay Shaw. It was dismissed almost instantly. No one other than Jim Garrison has ever tried to revive it. No one has said other than Jim Garrison, this really is what happened or anything of the sort. I think it's a thoroughly discredited investigation.
The jury later said that they were convinced by the case that Garrison put on that there was a conspiracy in the John Kennedy assassination, but they weren't convinced beyond reasonable doubt that Clay Shaw was involved in it.
I ask you, Mr. Garrison, if you had it to do over again, would you launch another investigation?
Yes, I would have to, because once you know that something was hidden, once you know what happened, then you have no choice. But I would say that I would do it with a great deal of reluctance, because it never occurred to me that so many people would take it for granted that I would lie about such a subject. But now that I've discovered that a large segment of the American press takes it for granted that you're automatically a liar because you're elected to office, I would go in again, but I would go in with more reluctance.
I say that despite enormous adversity and terrific opposition of a secret kind from the U.S. government, Garrison nevertheless managed to get his hands on somebody who appears to have been connected somehow to this case. No, Clay Shaw was not an assassin. No, Clay Shaw probably was not even an assassin's handler. But yes, Clay Shaw, along with David Ferry and Guy Bannister, did have something very definitely to do with manipulating Oswald during the summer of 1963, when Oswald was playing intelligence fun and games in New Orleans.
You know, we support our governments. Our governments are answerable to us, are accountable. That's a better word. And Jim was just trying to get at that fundamental idea that we are not content to just take the word of very powerful people, because in Jim's own words, he's seen powerful people and he's not impressed.
Maybe your government isn't always out for you. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's Jack Kennedy who's the one who's out for you, and they get to him first. So that means people should know more about the country they live in and the meaning of public relations and foreign policy, because they are involved and they can't keep it away by pushing it away. The same thing's true about the continued concealment of the murder of John Kennedy. They can't put it away. They have to confront it.
Wanted to give him the last word. You know, one of the things that really got to me, I'm sure you remember this, Jim, that Garrison died just like, 5 days before the JFK Records Act was signed into law by President Bush?
Yeah, it was in 92.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
He died the 21st and the law was signed on the 26th. So
yeah.
On his deathbed, he knew that this was coming to pass, but he didn't get to live to see the day.
Right.
Tragic.
He was just happy the movie came out. Okay. You know, he said words to the effect, something like this is worth, all the pain and agony I went through to see this film made about my inquiry. And I can't believe in light of what we know about Clay Shaw today, and we talked about this in the film, for these people to have said that he was Mr. Clean, is so utterly ridiculous. Let me close the show with one thing I want to tell you, which tells us a lot about the media and about Mr. Shaw. Martin Waldron was a reporter for the New York Times. He was sent down to New Orleans and Dallas in 66 and 67 to study the Kennedy assassination. As the scene shifted over to New Orleans, he left Dallas, went to New Orleans, and started investigating. He discovered information from his own sources, not Garrison's, that Sean Ferry did work for the CIA. Okay. And that in 1947, they very well might have been involved in what was at that time to be a private little invasion of Cuba. Okay. And so he told one of these guys who worked for Garrison's office, he said, when I came up with that information, do you know what they did? He goes, what? They closed down the investigation. The New York Times decided to close down their investigation of the JFK case.
Wow.
And I should add, it happened at Time Life also, when Dick Billings was discovering information about David Ferry using a private airport in Dallas, and that he knew a couple of the pilots there. And he was there a few days before the assassination. That's when Holland McCombs, who was the manager of that investigation, shut down that investigation also. This is the kind of media we have. In other words, they would rather shut things down completely than have in any way, shape, or form back up what Jim Garrison was saying. That's the kind of stakes that they were playing with here. Okay. I don't think you can get much more profound than that.
Yeah. And, we talk about that, Rick, so much on this show. We're always criticizing the mainstream media. We're taking them apart every single day here on Maverick News. And both of us used to work in the mainstream media, and we're both we got so sick and tired of lying to people. That's the whole reason Maverick News exists.
Oh, I never lied to anybody.
Yeah.
I did leave, but I never lied.
You just read what they give you, that you read the script.
When they started trying to change my scripts, I left.
Exactly, because it's false. It's not true. And if you have any integrity at all, you just cannot go along with that. So
And for my colleagues who were there when I left, I mean, there were other reasons, and the official reasons were not that, but ultimately I was frustrated, and I just knew it was time to go.
Yeah. And the whole reason that this show exists, Jim, is Rick started it when the Freedom Convoy rolled into Ottawa earlier this year, back in January, because he knew, after all his years in the mainstream media, he knew they were going to lie about the convoy, and they did. So Maverick News was here to show everybody the truth from the ground every single day, to have an alternate.
So I owe this 3 hour and 40 appearance to the Ottawa truck drivers. Oh my God.
Thank you once again, truckers, for freedom and freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
It's funny how the trucking industry intersects with the murder of JFK.
There's those Teamsters again, right?
Okay. I have to go because I have to meet someone in Pasadena.
It's gone overtime.
Yeah, we've got 40 minutes overtime.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for being so generous.
And if you want to have me on later, if you want to clean up or something like that, there's something you didn't get to, just let me know. Okay.
Oh man, there's so much we didn't get to. But it was great. It was so great, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a real privilege to meet you, Jim, and I think your book is awesome.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, it's great work.
Thank you so much. All right. And Lori, thank you for having me.
Thanks,
okay. Have a very good night.
You too.
Right, okay. Thank you, Jim.
Same to you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it, folks.
How about that?
JFK Revisited. You can get the book on Amazon. That's where I got it. I downloaded the digital version, and it's well worth the read. It's about 500 pages.
It'll keep you busy
But-
for a while.
Yeah, but it's a fast read. It's you'll find a lot of additional information in the they've kind of transcribed interviews with the people that they have in the film, in the documentary. So there's a wealth of information in there, and I learned a lot of new things when I read it, and it's a great piece of work.
And it's the perfect companion to the film, you know. So if you're really into this, you want to have both. You want to watch the film. You can see it on pretty much any streaming platform like Amazon Prime. I think YouTube actually has the full 4-hour version. Showtime, if you're a Showtime subscriber, you can see it there. And you can buy a DVD if you want it to keep all 4 hours, and you'll learn more about the Kennedy assassination than we could even cover tonight. We just barely scratched the surface. But I think Oliver Stone and Jim DiEugenio made the definitive documentary. There's probably no more than you could ever know or ever learn about the JFK assassination and what really happened than by watching JFK Revisited.
Yeah. Fantastic interview. A real privilege to have Jim on tonight.
Isn't he great?
Yeah.
He's such a fount of knowledge. He's like the oracle, you know. If you want to know anything, you ask Jim DiEugenio.
Yeah.
He probably knows the answer.
Yeah. Every detail.
Every
Amazing.
detail.
Amazing.
So
amazing work.
I know we went over time, but thanks for letting us do that. And you know, it's hard to cover these subjects in a short period of time. And again, that's why Maverick News is here, because if this were a mainstream media show, we might have 30 minutes tops, right?
Yeah.
And you just can't cover it in 30 minutes. So thanks to, you know, the internet and YouTube, we're able to do a long form interview with Jim and really dig deep.
Yeah. And I did put links in the descriptions to Jim's website, I believe, and to the link, I think, on Amazon where you can buy the book. Anyway, there are links in the description. So
check it out.
You know, you definitely want to support that. And thank you everyone for tuning in tonight.